Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where I want to talk about the Houston Rockets, who are, amid all of the contract extensions and free agency signings that are flying around the NBA, they are reportedly unlikely to offer max extensions to both Josh Green and Alperen Sengun this offseason. Both of these players were selected in the 2021 draft in the first round and have been, I would say for the most part, big hits for them. Now, Josh Green has absolutely had his ups and downs throughout the course of his career. I think he was very raw when he first came in, and last year we saw him be able to flash a little bit more of his potential down the stretch of the year. Maybe not coincidentally when Alperen Sengun went down with an injury, but I think that does also sort of play into this conversation of they are both very good talents, but is it worth them jumping the gun a little bit to hand out these contract extensions? Because I'm sure Jalen Green's camp feels like they can point to the final part of the season and say, well, look what we were just doing when we were the number one option there. We deserve max money. And Alperen Sengun, just for the fact that he's been, I would say, overall the most reliable Houston Rocket of the past 3 years. Obviously, I know the bar is maybe a little bit low there, but with Sengun, he has been sort of, and we saw he was kind of, I don't know if I would go as far to say as he was the hub of their offense last season, but they played through him a lot. And I thought that it was successful when they did, so that's great. But is he going to be able to be somebody that can play a little bit? Because you can't imagine that Alperen Sengun is going to be the number one option on a massively successful team. Now, maybe I'll end up, regretting that statement someday, but, he's still just 21 years old, so who knows? Maybe the developmental track of Sengun will be some sort of a Nikola Jokic light. I mean, that does kind of feel like, and obviously I know how outlandish of a statement that is, comparing him to, Jokic is one of the best players in NBA history, but for Sengun, he would kind of have to play a similar role there. I know everybody always makes the comparisons of Jokic, Sabonis, and Sengun all sort of playing similar roles as one another. I think that Sabonis can be a number two on a really good team, and maybe Sengun can find his way into playing in a team system that isn't, so much predicated on him as time goes on here. But again, I still feel like all of this to be said, I don't hate them trying to further evaluate what they have in both of these players before making this massive commitment on them. And I will say, when I first saw this report, immediately where my head went was, well, that is basically case in point as to why you don't overpay veterans like they did last offseason in Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. And I thought that was going to be the big reason why they weren't going to be able to pay either Sengun or Green this type of money. It's actually not the case. They only have $121 million on the books for next season, and the majority of that is controlled in team options, starting with Fred VanVleet, who has a $44.9 million team option for next season that I kind of have to imagine they're going to decline. Now, we'll obviously see how this next year plays out, but again, if they were so concerned of we're absolutely all in on Josh Green and Alperen Sengun, then we can just sign these contracts, not even worry about the VanVleet number, because it will eventually be null and we'll just get rid of it. But it doesn't actually seem to be the case. And Dillon Brooks, he still has something like $40 million left on his deal over the course of 2 years. It's a descending contract, so it's going to be $21 million next year and then just under 20 in 2026-27. But that's another contract that I honestly feel like could be pretty movable if they would like to. So, they have the financial capabilities to be able to pay both of Green and Sengun. Now, it's a topic of conversation because we're seeing other people in that class get these contracts. Cade Cunningham was sort of the spark for it, where he got the deal, and then almost immediately this report came out after. So that's why it's being talked about right now. But again, they still have a lot of sort of options here moving forward, where they have other, top end draft picks that they've taken, such as Cam Whitmore. I mean, he went to 20. That was probably a bad place to start there, but was once viewed as a top 4 or 5 prospect in his class before his fall. Amen Thompson, though, they just drafted Reed Shepard. Tari Eason has been a really pro for them since they took him, and I'm trying to think what draft class he was in. I believe it was 2022 was when he was taken there. So Jabari Smith Jr. I can't believe that's the last name I mentioned out of that list. But, the point being, there's a lot of players that are going to be looking to get theirs in the coming years. And especially under this new luxury tax situation and the current collective bargaining agreement, I wouldn't want to get stuck with Josh Green or Sengun on. I don't think that either of them are ever going to be bad contracts necessarily, but there is going to be some level of they might, if they were to spend the money now, they might end up hurting themselves in the long term in terms of not being able to pay some of these younger guys and falling into a slippery situation in terms of the salary cap. So I don't hate the idea for them. It's interesting because the Rockets were also just rumored, at least according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, at least kind of kicking the tires on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. This was a few weeks ago when the Mikal Bridges to the Knicks trade first broke out. But, I'm not really sure where the Rockets are going to go from here. I believe that Ime Udoka is a very good coach and is going to help lead the Rockets to some legitimately relevant seasons in the coming years. But it's also probably going to take, some level of, I don't even know exactly what it is in terms of, they're going to have to figure out what the hierarchy is in this organization. And that's really what I'm getting at here, is they can't just fire away every contract extension at the time that it becomes available, because of the idea that they do have high ceilings and they could pan out. The Rockets feel like an organization that is trying to, yes, they've acquired all of this youth talent that they've helped to develop over the past handful of years, but what type of a team do they want to be moving forward, and who is going to be a priority in that? Because I've been a defender of Josh Green in terms of, I think he is very talented, but there is some question as to whether he can play actual winning basketball, or if he is kind of a product of just being a great individual talent who doesn't necessarily fit in with a winning culture just yet. And again, I think that he can get there. He came in through the G League Ignite, which I have expressed my discontent for a number of years, and I think that because of that, it almost sort of took him out of, what it's like to play for an actual winning culture, a program that is built on chemistry and all of that. And then he came into the Rockets and was able to put up just about however many shots he wanted to on a given night, where, let me double check right now, but yeah, I mean, he was putting up 18 shots a game on 41% from the field in his sophomore season. And last year was definitely the most promising he's been, despite that we saw his scoring dip off from the sophomore season to his third season, but I still feel like he played better basketball as a whole. But again, no guarantees with any of this. That's how the Rockets feel, and they are going to try and look to further evaluate before committing any money to either of them. So let me know whether or not you think this is the right decision for the Rockets. Again, it is a little bit of a tough decision, but I think I understand where they're coming from, absolutely. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. To everyone else, just a reminder to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back tomorrow. We will see you then. Have a great 4th of July and take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.